Wildwood Film Festival is happening this month, and I have filmmaker Michael Sajbel on the phone today. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. Good to be here.
Now, Wildwood is featuring your film Wraith at the festival, and something I really loved about it is you were both screenwriter and director. What were some of the advantages and possible disadvantages to wearing both of those hats?
Well, this is not the first time that I've worn both hats as screenwriter and director, and truth be told that almost every director gets a final pass at the screenplay before filming, basically to personalize it and to have it conform to your vision. So that's the advantage, is that you can get your vision on paper, and it's another tool for the director to communicate their vision to the crew, the cast, and all of that. And it's really important because the actors will read it and start to live the roles and get your vision as well. But even hiring the actors, a lot of them are very conscious about the roles that they're going to play, and they want to know their motivation and all of that and how they fit into the whole scheme. And so it's pretty important tool to be able to write the draft, the final draft. The disadvantage is that you almost invariably missed something, or there's a logic question or something where if there was a separate writer talking to the director and the director asking the writer questions, there's a dialogue there, you know. And if you're the only person, you're the writer and the director, that dialogue goes on in your head.
Sure.
After so many drafts, I always write about 10 drafts of a movie. Neil Simon, a famous playwright, once said that, you know, the real creation comes in rewriting and polishing and editing yourself. And I like to think I have the ability to be able to edit myself, but I write the screenplay and then I just refine it and refine it and refine it and add things and all of that. But there's nothing like having an extra voice in there. What I did on this in particular is I had a lot of people read it, including Jason Buss, one of the 3 directors of Wildwood Film Festival, and they all put in input. And even if I don't necessarily agree with their input, I find that if they're asking a question to begin with, there's a reason why they're asking that question. There's something that I may have left out or didn't describe adequately, or I could just be out to lunch, you know.
Yes.
So, anyway, I really, unless something is offered to me, and that still happens, I still get screenplays sent to me with funding and a job offer attached to direct. Unless that happens, I'll probably, for the rest of my career, do things that I write myself, because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the process.
Now, one aspect of Wraith I found very unique is the twist you added to the ghost story. And I'm not going to reveal any spoilers. I don't want to give anything away before it shows at Wildwood. However, I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't a typical ghost story. The twist itself, was that a choice from the beginning, or was it something you decided to add later on in the development of the film?
That's a great question, and I can answer that any number of ways, but I'd like to start off with the title of the film, Wraith, W-R-A-I-T-H. It's a ghost or a spirit, and if you look up several definitions, it'll be a wisp or a faint trace of something, just a presence. And then the part that really got me about the definition was it appears shortly after its death or before its death. And that definition alone, as you can figure out, is what contributed to how the film ends. That, oh my gosh, this is something, a ghost or a spirit, that is, making an appeal throughout the entire film. So that's part A, you might say, of my answer. Part B is that, and this is the part where anybody who wants to can accuse me of being crazy. I had this apartment in Beverly Hills for 6 years, and it was a wonderful apartment, perfectly situated, and I could open up the windows in California. That's most of the year, and all this parade of people would walk by. The first African American Playboy centerfold lived on my street. A girl across the street was dating Johnny Carson while he was still married, And there all of these people that are recognizable were walking by, and I got to know everybody on the street, and I loved that apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, eventually I made enough money to buy a house up in the Hollywood Hills. But years later, I find myself dreaming that I'm going back to my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Each time I go back to my apartment, there are new people there. And sometimes they even run away screaming. And finally in my dream one day, and this is a repetitive dream,
mm-hmm.
the lady came out and said to some people, "Don't mind him. He doesn't want to do us any harm. And he never stays here very long." And then I realized I was the ghost.
Uh-huh.
I was the ghost in my own story.
Yeah.
And so if you talk about a ghost story, and any good ghost story or a story about a spirit, what motivates the ghost? What motivates the ghost has to motivate them like any other character in the movie. Everyone has to have a motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise you don't have a story or you don't have a movie. So that's part B to my answer. And then part C would simply be, in any movies like this, you lay out breadcrumbs.
Uh-huh.
And you follow the path. You know, when you want to return, you follow the breadcrumbs. And that's probably from an old fairy tale or something. And quite simply, in the editing room, when sometimes there's too many clues, there are too many clues to something, and people get it in advance, and you want to remain in a film, particularly like Race, you want to be like the sixth sense,
uh-huh.
where the boy in the beginning says, "I see dead people," but you don't really want that to pay off until the end.
Yes.
That's good storytelling. So that's part C of how the film was constructed.
So Wildwood's mission is to provide a spotlight on Wisconsin filmmakers, and I noticed the film was shot locally in the Fox Valley. In fact, I even spotted the Appleton Airport in a scene, and it's my understanding that many of the cast and crew are from Wisconsin, and you graduated from Appleton East. What was it like to work on a film project in your home state, and what's it going to be like to be able to see that finished film featured in your hometown?
Well, the great thing about the Wildwood Film Festival in Appleton is their mission statements to highlight the work of, people who have a Wisconsin connection. And sometimes it can be a little strained. This one guy, he was once stranded at the Appleton Airport for 5 hours. And, but no, largely these are all very indigenous films, either shot in Wisconsin or by people, significant crew members or cast members who are from here. Mm-hmm. And I love that premise. I love that unique take on everything. And if you go out to California, and particularly when we were winning all these Rose Bowls during the 1990s, mm-hmm. there was a huge Wisconsin contingent out there. A lot of people had graduated from the universities here or hitchhiked or, got together the gas money to go out to LA and start film careers, and it mounted into the hundreds and hundreds of people who were expats, from Wisconsin, and I think the number one dream of anyone is to come back to their hometown or their home state and accomplish something, or to be recognized
yes.
as accomplishing something. So I live here now, and I live on Lake Winnebago. And I still have a place in California, in Los Angeles, but most of the year I'm here. I'm looking over the frozen lake right now, and I see, sheds for the sturgeon spearing coming up this weekend, and
uh-huh.
snowmobile tracks and all that. And this is my home. This is where my heart is. So about half or even 2/3 of what I'm developing now as future projects all are Wisconsin-centric. They'll take place here. They'll be shot here, and it's just really great to be able to do a movie here. And I think that the people who have seen the film so far really respond to seeing their community on film. Hey, I know that neighborhood, or I know that house, and you mentioned the Appleton Airport. They had just put that sign up, and you don't realize it's about your community, but it's always going through transition. While we were filming, they changed the hospital in Neenah from Theta Clark to Theta Care. Mm-hmm. And you can see they're still working on the sign in the background of one of the shots. So people really respond positively. And we also found that there are a lot of very talented people in this area. Our cameraman, Antonio Mata, is originally from Mexico, and he is an extraordinarily skilled cameraman, and I've worked with many cameramen in Hollywood, and Antonio is right up there. People in Hollywood, we finished the film in Hollywood. We did the mix, we did the music composition, we did the color timing. All of that was done in Hollywood professionally.
Okay.
So that the film would look as good as it possibly could. And they all said, this Antonio guy you got, your cameraman, he can work in Hollywood anywhere, anytime, any day, on any film. And it's totally true. And there are a lot of other people in the area, whether they had a line of dialogue or helped with the wardrobe or even helped drive trucks and cars. Tremendous pool of talent in Wisconsin, and they all are very eager to help you out.
And my second part of the question was, what's it going to be like to see that finished film featured in your hometown?
Well, it's a joy. For one thing, the very first movie that I ever wrote, I was 22 years old. It was called Gray Eagle, starring Alex Cord and Ben Johnson and Lana Wood. And it was held over 1 week at the Viking Theater, which is now it's called a Katsuya. It's a Japanese restaurant, but it's right across the street from where Wraith will be showing. And so it's sort of like bookends my career to this point.
Sure.
From my very first movie to my most recent film are going to be showing within 500 feet of each other, and it's thrilling to see the film with an audience watching. It's great to hear them react. When they laugh, when they scream or somehow react. And so it's just a thrill, and it's an honor, and ultimately a pleasure and a privilege. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Wraith on the screen February 16th at 9 o'clock at the Kimberly Clark Room of the TAC.
I'm definitely eager to see it again, too. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Now, something else you're doing at the festival that weekend is the Saturday education seminar called The Business of Filmmaking. You're one of 3 panelists who's going to be educating other filmmakers. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what you guys are going to talk about?
Yes, well, I'd love to. First of all, there's one other guy on the panel. You said 3, and one of them is my executive producer, and he helped me raise the money. Brian Murray, he actually was sort of at the very beginning of the film when he said, "Hey, Michael, let's make a movie for this much money," and he mentioned a dollar figure, and he really was at the very beginning there, and I want to credit him with that. And he is also professionally a CPA, a certified public accountant. So I don't think he knew necessarily what he was getting into when he said yes. but he knows now, and he was really great. He rolled with the punches, and he dealt with unions and payroll and the investors and all of that. So he was very valuable, and there's so much that he learned that he's going to say at this seminar. I have a list as well that I've compiled just randomly as I think of them, of points that beginning filmmakers and even filmmakers who've worked but maybe have always just been employees and have never done their own project. These are points that are just absolutely essential. And you might even say they're bits of wisdom that I've picked up in my career, which has been about 30 years now. You know, like I can tell you one right now. Your first movie is not going to be financed by someone you don't know.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's very simple. You can put it on bulletin boards. You can put it on GoFundMe sites. You can do all of that. It's an aunt or an uncle, your bar mitzvah money, your paper route money from when you were growing up, or whatever. That's what's going to finance your first movie. investors. Here's another example. I promise you that there will be one recognizable face or name in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that means everything, to selling it foreign, to putting it on pay TV, to putting it on a DVD, all of that. You can make a perfectly great film, and I've seen it done many times, but if there's not a single name in it or somebody of any kind of recognizability,
Mm-hmm.
you're really kind of hamstringing yourself. You're really handicapping yourself. All these little tidbits can help you orient yourself if you want to make a film that is eventually going to be commercially viable. You know, if somebody's giving you money to make a movie as a class project and there's no expectation of return, you don't ever need to make a dime on it, nobody's going to put a gun to your head, or, you know, you don't have investors who are trusting you, then go ahead and make any movie you want.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ultimately want to make a living as well as being an artist, I think the seminar is going to be essential knowledge.
I think that's one of the important things, too, that you just said, is that it's both an art and a business. And, you know, sometimes people are like, I'm doing my art, you know, but then they've also got to be able to move over into the business aspect. And so I think the class is going to be really good for that.
One of my rules, if you want to even call it a manifesto, is to never be critical of another filmmaker's work.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's doing hard R-rated horror films, or if they're doing PG-rated kids movies, or if they're doing religious movies, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it's not my place to criticize that filmmaker or
Mm-hmm.
that group of filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I want to protect people from is unrealistic expectations if you don't follow some basic rules.
Sure. And my final question for you is, what advice or tips would you give filmmakers who want to create a film in the horror or thriller genre?
If you take a graph of the movie-making universe and you look at who the film goers are, you'll find out that the majority of people who see a movie are males between 14 and 24, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then you continue on what is their favorite kind of movie, and
Mm-hmm.
you triangulate and you deduct and you arrive at a place where you realize that this particular genre, horror or supernatural thriller, has a built-in audience.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many other different kinds of audiences. There are many other different kinds of films out there. But if you want to work in this area and you want to have the film have a chance in commercial at all,
Mm-hmm.
then this is a great area to work. So that's answering your question one way. The other way of looking at it is to study the genre, know what has been done before you, know exactly the kind of films that have been done, and nobody really wants to see a film that, in my opinion, that's not in one way or another groundbreaking or
Mm-hmm.
new or different.
Mm-hmm.
So be original. There's a very frightening movie that I saw once with Tim Robbins,
Mm-hmm.
and it was called Jacob's Ladder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that
And
one.
It is a nightmarish film. My gosh, was that original.
Yeah.
There's another movie like with Nicole Kidman called The Others.
Yes. Uh-huh.
These are essential. And look at the original British TV show of The Woman in Black. Not the one with Daniel Radcliffe, not the latest one, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the original. It's a very poor copy. It's like TV from the 60s or something like that. But it's utterly frightening. And you say, well, what is frightening about this? And then your next decision is commercially as well. There's a huge audience for R-rated horror films, and then there's a very large audience for PG-13 rated horror films.
Mm-hmm.
They have different audiences. one is not going to satisfy the other.
Mm-hmm.
Our movie, Race, is not satisfying to hard, R-rated horror film fans.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It might be, but it's not. But say you've got kids in their early teens, and even kids who are younger than that can watch Race and enjoy it. That was a very conscious decision. So you just kind of have to know your, if you will, your parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And I could give a much longer answer, but I won't.
Thank you again for taking some time to chat on the phone today, Michael. Can't wait to see Wraith up on the big screen at Wildwood Film Festival.